What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Jake, this is Nerd Level Rising, and today I want to talk about the Malazan novella collections and how they're getting Malazan-y, okay? So let me just start this off by saying I'm a gigantic Malazan fan. I have not read everything that's out there, but what I have read, man, it's hit me so strongly. Like, it is pierced my soul in a way that very few other series have. And there are scenes from these books that, you know, even the opening scene of Gardens of the Moon that I read back in the end of 2019, I think it was October of 2019. So that would have been, almost 5 years ago now. It's just etched into my brain. Like, I cannot forget just the vivid image of some of these scenes. When I read, it's like a movie, right? It's very, very vivid movement, everything. All the characters have a face and a distinct voice and all those things. I see everything like a huge movie. And these things are just burned into me, right? I can't forget some of these scenes. So the Book of the Fallen in particular is one of my favorite things ever. I love it so much. And I've read 5 of the 6 novels of the Malazan Empire so far. I'm going to read the last one here in September, and I'm so excited for that. I've really enjoyed those books overall. They've been a little bit more rocky than the Book of the Fallen was, but nonetheless, I've still really enjoyed it overall. I haven't read the prequel stuff yet. I haven't read the sequel stuff yet, but 15 of the 16 main chronology timeline books I have read. So I hope that's enough credibility to talk about these a little bit. And I'm not even here to critique these at all, right? I'm just here to kind of talk about my reading experience with these so far. So let's start with what's going on here, right? Why did I want to read these now? The reason I jumped into these before I got into the other stuff is very simple. They're, for the most part, complete / standalone-y, right? So we have the sequel stuff that, number one, I can't read because I haven't read Assail yet, right? That's the last book in the novels of the Malazan Empire. I, of course, want to read that first before I get into the Witness stuff. And the Witness stuff being that it's ongoing, I can read that sort of as they're coming out, right? So I plan to finish Assail here this month. Then I'll be able to read The God Is Not Willing as we get ready for No Life Forsaken and whatever book 3 is called. I don't know if we have a title yet, as the Witness series continues from there. I have not read Carcanus yet because we don't have the 3rd book yet. And once I heard the news that Erickson was going to go back and finish that relatively soon and get it out there, I was like, okay, I'll continue to wait and I'll just read those leading up to the release of the conclusion of that trilogy. And I've not yet read The Path to Ascendancy for a similar reason. It's still ongoing. I'm not in as much of a rush to start that just yet. I want to read these things that are kind of here. Also, the choice for these is that they're short, right? Novellas are short and sweet. And, I can kind of use them to break up some other bigger series that I'm kind of in the middle of. So that's why I chose to do these here at this point this year. And I jumped into these part 1, this first collection here, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And it was so fun, right? It was so fun to jump in and see these characters. I loved, in the Book of the Fallen especially, and we got to see a little bit more in one of the Esmond books so far, of these characters of Bauchelain and Korbal Broach and Amancipor Reese, that they're not main characters by any means, but they struck me, right? They were so interesting and so just attention grabbing on the page, and they're so quirky and weird, but at the same time, like, they're necromancers, right? It's very, very dark what's going on, but they're so funny, and it's typical Malazan, right? There's so many layers to these characters that make them entertaining, but also there's like this core of darkness that this just fun exterior sort of around, right? And it just makes for such an interesting experience reading these characters. And they stuck out to me so much in those previous books. So when I found out that there was novellas about these characters specifically, I was like, sign me up, dude. I'm ready for this, right? So I jumped in with collection number 1, and I was reading these before bed, right, for the last few weeks. And it worked great because if you flip through this book, the print is pretty big. The chapters are incredibly short. I mean, we're talking like 1 to 3 page chapters for the most part. They're very, very short. And it started out very simple, right? The first story in here is called Blood Follows. And this is really the story of how Reese, the manservant, met Bauchelain and Korbal Broach and kind of got teamed up with them. And we're getting to see the origin story in many ways of this weird this weird team up. And it's simple, right? It's simple and it's straightforward. And it was just fun and seeing where Rhys came from and his relationship with his wife, his family, and going through, there's this little mystery in the town that they're in. And then, we come across these two people that are just kind of unknown quantities, not really sure what's going on with them. And we as the reader can guess ahead of time because we already know who Bauchelain and Korbal Broach are. But in the story, nobody knows, right? So just seeing that knowledge come to Rhys was really fun. Again, because we knew where it was going, and it was fun to see him kind of learn where it was going as he went, and that was great. I liked that a lot, right? It was a great introduction to this novella collection. And then the second one that is sort of a direct sequel to that is called The Lees of Laughter's End. And when I see this title, that's how a lot of these titles are. They're very odd titles. They're you read the title and it's like, what the heck could that be about? That makes no sense. I don't understand. It's gibberish, this title. But we get in and it does make sense, right? This one takes place on a ship, right? And the Bauchelain and Korbal Broach and Rhys are traveling to escape basically where they were in the first novella. And we're seeing everything that's going on in this ship. And there's a lot of people on the crew that are super quirky and weird and funny, but it's mostly weird, right? It's just, you have the person up in the crow's nest that has her mother's decapitated head just decaying next to her that talks to her still. Like that level of Malazan weird, right? Which isn't that outside the box for a Malazan book, but it's just weird in the general scope of fantasy, right? So we have just a lot going on with these different crew members, and they all do have pretty distinct personalities. And it's still fairly easy to keep them separate, though there's not that many of them. And we're seeing how they're interacting with how these characters are interacting with the crew. We're seeing there's some weird. I'm saying weird a lot, but man, that's what these are, right? There's some magic that's going on with the environment. I'll say, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's some magic going on there that causes antics and action and some really nasty stuff to ensue. And just watching that play out, that was really entertaining. That was really cool. Then we get into the third part, which is again sort of a direct sequel, right? This sort of becomes a trilogy. This one's called The Healthy Dead, and here we're in another city. We're interacting with another larger, again, not massive, but larger cast of characters around them. That here we're seeing some of the dead are coming back to life, which is something that we've explored before in Malazan books, in the Book of the Fallen. And here we're just seeing sort of another flavor of that, another slightly different take on that. And we're seeing some other things about, the consequences of defining things as good and bad, right? That's sort of a central thought in that story, right? Is sort of if we try to outlaw all things that are bad or unhealthy and take that to the logical conclusion, it doesn't really work out that well, right? And that's one of the themes that are explored there. And that was really interesting. And there's some good humor in that one. And we see just more classic stuff that's been throughout this entire collection. We see the humor and the levity, and there's so much just lightness, quirkiness, just all of those things. But there's still that darkness, that brutal violence, the magical demons, and that magic can come from anywhere, right? All of those core Malazan aspects as well we see in here. And this really was just a fun romp through these sort of Malazan style side stories with these characters that are really fun. And that's what this was, right? I really enjoyed it, right? It was great. We did see in the third one here, The Healthy Dead, things started to become a bit more complex, and we're seeing the cast of characters has sort of increased in size with each one of these. And we get into the second collected tales of Bauchelain and Korbal Broach. The first one being The Worms of Blearmouth. I have no idea how to say that word. But again, the same theme of these titles sounding like utter nonsense until you read the story, I'm sure, and then it all makes sense. And I got about 20 pages into that, and then I was like, dude, I can't do this as a bedtime read anymore. It's getting Malazan-y now, right? The cast of characters is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger still. Each character is very complex. The way that Erikson writes, if you've read any Malazan books before, you know this. The way he writes his characters is there is no exposition. The characterization comes through the dialogue and how other characters interact with them, right? So we're not really learning that much through that character's eyes about who they are. We're learning about we learn about this person through how other people react and how they talk to each other. And that's just too much for me to juggle at this point when my brain is half asleep and I'm just trying to, wind down before I go to bed. So I have put this down for the moment. I am not DNFing it. I will come back to it very, very soon. I just need something else that's a little bit lighter to read right before bed, and I'll slot this back in here as one of my normal daytime reads at some point very soon, because I am very interested in this, and I do really want to continue these, right? The Worms of Blurmouth, I like where it started, right? What I'm understanding so far, I like where it started. I will probably start it over just to make sure I'm following all the character motivations and things like that. But I do like it. Then we'll have Crackpot Trail and the Fiends of Nightmaria that we get to jump into in the rest of this collection. These are getting a bit longer, like I said, more complex, all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to it very much, and I just need to be able to focus on it a little bit more. And I think this is also good because then I won't be reading this at night at the same time as reading A Sail in the daytime. I think I'll be able to get a little bit more out of my Malazan experience if I space things out a little bit more and not overlap them too much. So we'll get this in there soon. We'll get it in the mix soon. I don't know, maybe in October or something we'll get it in there. But yeah, great story. Just can't read it when you are half asleep. But the first collection, I think you can. It doesn't require nearly as much brain power. Overall, though, I do highly recommend these for people who are big fans of the series. I think that everything that you like about Malazan is in here. It just is more focused on a couple core characters that are going through these various adventures. These do expand a little bit as we go, like I've talked about, but more or less they are very simple compared to the main, 16-book Malazan series that I've read 15 of the 16, but you know what I mean. That if you're a big fan, especially of Bauchelain, Korbal, Broach, I think you'll like these a lot. If you're not a huge Malazan fan, I don't think this is going to be your bag, right? I don't think this is an entry point to Malazan, because to appreciate what's going on here, you need to know what's going on with the series already, right? You kind of need to know how the magic, just not how the magic works, but you just need to appreciate sort of the magic that's at play here. You need to appreciate the humor style, the just absurdity of the series, the way that Erikson just so seamlessly blends some things that almost feel like grimdark with things that are just so light. And, everybody talks about compassion when we get into Malazan, and obviously that's a big theme, but that stuff is in here, and just the balance of all of those things with, and the religions in the series and the cultures and how, I've talked about this before on the channel with John Gwynn about how authentic his stories feel. Erikson's books feel that way too, right? Just when you're on a ship or when you're in a tavern with a bunch of pirates talking to each other. Like, people talk how pirates would probably talk, right? Or street urchins talk how they would probably talk. And there's a lot going on that I think you'll appreciate these way more if you're already a big fan of the main series. And if you have not read any of those, I don't think you're going to get a ton out of these personally anyway. So there's my thoughts on the novellas. We will see when I can make this happen, and I'm excited to get to those. But nonetheless, there you go. So if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. Please leave me comments. Have you read these before? I would love to know what your experience was. And what do you think of my recommendation? Do you think people could use this as an entry point? Do you disagree with me, or are we on the same page? I don't know. But let me know what you thought. Let's talk about Malazan in the comments, man. I love talking about that series. It's amazing. Keep everything spoiler-free, please. Obviously, right? As always, we don't want to ruin the experience for anybody else. But man, that series is just incredible, right? And both of those authors are incredible. So awesome world to be able to go in there and play around in. So hit me up in the comments. Please subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. Check out some of my other videos. If you want to hang out some more, please subscribe to the channel. I love that. It means I get to grow and talk to more people and make friends with more people. That's what it's all about here at the end of the day. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.